Hello everybody and welcome back to Angie B Cards and Crafts. Thanks for joining me in this part 2 video of the gel press and MDF shapes video that I launched on the 29th of June. So since I last recorded I have continued to make the 2 sample plaques that I was doing in the last video. So if you remember, these 2 had come off the same gel plate, so they had similar colours in them, but there were still some differences, and I finished them off quite differently as well. So on this one you can see I've got gold edging, but there's also then black edging on the edge of the gold. I've stamped over the top and embossed part of the stamp that I've used. This stamp is a Tracy Evans All and Create stamp, one of her mushrooms I believe, and it's the border stamp that I used. And then I've used these Tim Holtz letters just to put a little message on. There was some other in the background, some additional stamping, but the advantage of using these border stamps is that they have lots of background parts to them, but you can choose to just select part of the image to make it stand out. So to do this I just used a gel pen and a glue pen, sorry, and went over the image and then put the embossing powder on top. On this one I did quite a lot of stamping in the background using a range of different colours of archival distress inks. I then used this stamp, which again I think is an All and Create if I remember correctly, and then I've put on this, which is an absolutely fabulous Pablo Picasso saying, "Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist." Can't actually remember whose stamp that is off the top of my head, but again I've gone round the edge on this one in black, but I haven't intentionally embossed right the way around the edge. There is some embossing because when I put the embossing powder on top of that focal image, some of the other ink was still damp underneath. So what's happened is it's picked up the embossing powder and it's stuck. So that's why there's quite a lot of different areas that are shiny. I wanted to just make this bit stand out, but some of the edging and some of the background stamps have also picked it up. And then I used, what did I use for those? Posca pens. I coloured these in with Posca pens, just to give them a little bit of a pow. I quite like that one. So we're going to do something similar with the heart tag that I made last time. So if you remember, we built this up with lots and lots of layers off the gel press, and once I was happy with it, with the colour of it and the way it looked, I just put some edging of black ink, Stazon I think I used in it around the edge, but you can use whatever black ink you've got as long as it is a permanent ink. If you do use something, for example a Black Soot Distress ink, that's fine, but it will react with water unless you do something to seal it. And one of the ways that you can do that is to actually put embossing powder on it when it's still quite wet, heat it up, and then the embossing powder will melt it onto the project. So I'm going to do that at the end. I'm actually going to go around the edge of this with the embossing powder because I just think it makes it stand out a little bit. And having reorganised my craft room in the last couple of weeks, I've kind of rediscovered my embossing powders, which have been hiding in a box under several other boxes, so weren't easily accessible. So what I'm going to do is decorate this up a little bit more, and hopefully by the end of this we will have a completed plaque. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some more background colours. So I've got a few different background stamps here. I quite like this numbers one. Again, I'm not sure where I get it from. I'm terrible, I don't keep the packaging off stamps, with the exception of my All and Create stamps and the stamps that the packaging, the ones that stick to the packaging, so like Indigo Blue and Paper Artsy, and my Diane Reevely ones, they all stick to the packaging, so I keep that packaging. But if it's separate like this, I tend not to. So I'm going to use this, but I'm going to use it without a stamp block because I just want it to be randomly put on. I'm going to use the Stazon because that's, oh, I don't want it in black. What am I doing? Now, I actually don't have a raggy about at the moment because I've just put them all in the washing machine. So we'll just use a little bit of kitchen towel, and I actually want to use my archival distress inks. So what I'm going to do is choose colours that are similar to the colours that are here. So we can have some purple, some pink, and I think we'll go for faded jeans. So we've got faded jeans, dusty concord and picked raspberry. I'd love to know how many people say pickled raspberry, because I know quite a lot of people do, and I used to. I'm going to start with the lightest colour, which is going to be the pink, and just pop a couple of stamps of this on top. As I say, I'm not really bothered too much about how they look, it's just additional texture. Okay, so that's that done. That's all I'm going to do with that one. We'll pop that to one side, and then we'll use this Ziggy Zaggy. This is another one, it's a favourite, and it's looking a little bit dishevelled at the moment. And we'll go for the blue with this one. Now don't be fooled by the title Faded Jean, it's not that faded. So you can see that's showing up quite a lot, and I'm not worried if I go over some of the previous image, and I don't know if you can see that clearly or not, but there are just little added bits of texture now because of the extra stamping, and that's all I'm wanting. This is just about building up a background. It's not about thinking, oh, what goes with the main image, because it's about the background, the texture. So I'm now going to use this one, which is, as you can see, it's like a bark stamp. So that's got absolutely nothing to do with zigzags and numbers, but I just happen to like this stamp, and we will use the Dusty Concord with this. So I'm just going to put the ink on part of it, as I have with the others. And what I like about doing this is that you can choose if you want a very narrow piece, or if you want just a specific piece. You can just do a tiny little stamp, or you can do a bigger stamp, or you can do the whole of it like that. That's not coming on terribly well, actually. I'm wondering if my purple ink is a little bit dry. Let's squish a little bit more on. That looks a bit more juicy. Oh, that's better. I'll pop a bit of that in the middle. So this isn't showing up terribly well on the background, and that's something that you can also do. You can just about make out the lines of it coming down here and here, and it doesn't matter. That doesn't bother me, but what you will find, because when I'm doing the embossing, this doesn't necessarily dry completely on top of the acrylic, and part of the reason for that, I'm thinking, I haven't got scientific evidence to this, but my thinking is the acrylic is a form of plastic. You're putting ink on top of plastic. It's not designed to stick. So the only ink really that is going to stick well with a little bit of drying is your Stazon, because it's oil-based. So these other inks, yes, they're good, they're permanent, but they're permanent on surfaces. They've got a little bit more of a porous surface. They're not going to be permanent on this until you emboss them. So when I do the embossing, you will notice that the background image is similar to on the other heart. Similar to on this one, the background images will start to show through as they're embossed as well. So you'll see them a little bit more then. Okay, so I've chosen a couple of other stamps to go on as the main images. Now I've chosen them from these two sets from Paper Artsy Eclectica. They're both Seth Apter designed. So I've got this one, which is kind of looks a little bit like a brass ornamental piece. And I've also chosen this one, which is, to me, it looks like it's the front of an old-fashioned filing cabinet where you put the label. So I'm going to use that one as well. Okay, so for that I do need my stamp mat. Bear with me one moment because I've forgotten to get it out. Where is it? There it is, it's right by me and I couldn't see it. There we go. So options for ink are Stazon, which as I say is an oil-based but fast drying. It's solvent based and it's fast drying. So what happens is you put it on, and unless you get it into the embossing powder quite quickly, you're going to end up with only part of the image embossed, and that can be troublesome, particularly if you're not using a stamping platform. If you use a stamping platform, obviously you can come back in at exactly the same point. And although I do have a stamping platform, I tend not to use it. I really should use it more than I do, because I do tend to ruin some things occasionally. But I think it's just laziness, because it involves moving other things to get it out and put it on the table. So what you've got is your Stazon, which will work, but you have to work a little bit faster, or you have VersaFine Clair. Now I am on, you will see on my VersaFine Clairs, they have numbers on them. And these are the order in which I've used them. I've written that one on the wrong side. So I've got 1, 2 and number 3. Number 3 is my newest one. And I was finding that when I was using number 2, I'm starting to get a duller print. I'm not getting as complete an image. And to me, VersaFine Clair is an ink which gives a really, really clear print. So if I show you the difference, because it might be that you've got an ink and you're thinking, well, why isn't it working? And it could just be that you need a new ink pad. So if I show you number 1, might as well use this. So this is number 1. This is my pad, the first VersaFine Clair pad that I worked with. So there it is, inked up. You can see it's still slightly grey, usually quite a big open time on these, and you get a nice juicy image. It's nice and clear and crisp and lovely. But with that one, it's grey. So I've kept this. It sounds a bit daft to keep an ink pad that doesn't have the ink on it anymore. I have looked for re-inkers of the VersaFine Clair, and I need to do a little bit more research to find out if the ordinary VersaFine re-inker will work. But for now, I've just gone for the option of buying another pad. So this is number 2. So this is the one that has just started not performing as well as I would like. But I keep number 1 because I quite like this faded image in some scenarios, and also if I want a paler edging on a piece of work but I still want it slightly darker than, say, white, then I get that. So you can see number 2. I don't know why I'm working right to left, very bizarre. And number 3, so this one, I mean, you can straight away see, you can see the ink on it, you can hear that suction as the ink is transferring onto the stamp, which lets you know you've got a really nice juicy stamp that's going to do what you want it to do. So they are all the same colour, but they're just performing at different levels. Okay, so you can see the one that's the oldest is grey. I do quite like it still. This one is okay for a stamp this size, but what I was finding was when I was working on something which you had to stamp one part and then the next part to get the full image, this part was drying off and looking more like this. So I then went on to the third one, which was that one there. Okay, so I'm going to use number 3, VersaFine Clair, on my heart, which I have put some, oh, there it is. Can't see for looking. Now I'm also going to get out my clear embossing powder. My clear embossing powder in an old takeaway tub. And there's lots of other things and bits in there. There's also a spoon in there. That's what that is. In case you're wondering what was hiding in it, it's a spoon. So I'm going to turn this on its side, and the only reason that I'm doing that is when I stamp, I want to make it as easy as possible to get the image onto the piece of work. And if I'm trying to stamp this way around, I'm having to reach over with one arm. If I turn it this way, I can stamp it with ease. I can choose where I'm placing it, push it down. And like I always say, make sure you keep one hand, even on small stamps, it's important to keep one hand still while you move the other one, because the last thing you want is the image not to transfer well. And the All and Create stamp mats are brilliant because they will bend in the middle. So you can see we have got an image there, but it isn't particularly bold. Not bothered by that because we have embossing powder. So I'm just going to sprinkle that over, and you'll see when I tap it off, it's caught on all these background bits as well, which is fine. We'll turn it around and we'll get all the other background bits. Might as well do it all in one go. So now you can see the numbers. You can start to see where that bark stamp was, more of the numbers here and here. And then this is the central image. Now it looks quite white and it doesn't look like you're going to see much of the central image. But because the central image has been stamped in black and the embossing powder is clear, you'll be able to see it. So if you've got headphones in, please turn the volume down now because I'm about to put the heat tool on. Now I'm purposely using this heat tool for the simple reason it might not be the ideal for doing this job, but it's not as noisy. My other heat tool is very, very noisy. So the embossing powder is bringing out all the colour of the other inks that we put on with the background stamps. So you can start to see the pink coming through, the blue of the faded jeans, that's your picked raspberry, faded jeans, and your dusty concord will be in there as well. I really had forgotten how much fun embossing powder was, and it's making me wonder whether I need to look at getting some of the Wow embossing powders that I keep seeing demonstrated on Hochanda. I think it's on Hochanda. They look rather good and they have a whole range of colours. I've recently discovered they even have a matte embossing powder, which is brilliant because most embossing powders are shiny, but the concept of a matte embossing powder means that you can make non-permanent inks permanent but not shiny. I'm going to sneeze, I apologise. Oh, it's gone. Oh, excuse me. Apologies for that. Right. So I think that's all heated up. Okay. So now you can see, this is quite warm to touch, but you can see we've got the purpley colour here of the bark stamp with the dusty concord. We've got the picked raspberry of the pink, and we've got the faded jean of the zigzag. We have this image now because this is being stamped onto a knobbly bobbly surface, because we have all the layers of acrylic paint on it. You're not going to get a super clear image, so you're not going to get the exact image that you saw on the other sheet of paper, and I wouldn't expect to, and that's not what this was about. This was about just having something there that was adding a little bit of interest. So the other thing that I thought I would use is, there it is, I need to put it somewhere. So I'll just take that stamp off, just give it a quick wipe. Feels awful using kitchen towel with no raggies around. She'll have to rectify that as soon as they're out. Put them straight in the tumble dryer. Right, so the other thing, the VersaFine Clair, you don't have to clean your stamps. I tend to just give them a little bit of a rub over with the VersaFine Clair because it stays wet for longer, and otherwise I end up getting VersaFine Clair absolutely everywhere. So what you can decide now is, do you want this at an angle? So the one I'm going to use, if you remember, is this one here. So it's the front of a drawer of an old-fashioned filing cabinet for putting the label in. So am I going to use it straight, or am I going to use it as at an angle? I actually think on this one, I think I quite like it slightly wonky. Yes, I'm going to go on the wonk. So we'll pop this on, and we will put some more, use the VersaFine Clair again. Now I have checked which way up it goes because I want to make sure that the filigree bit is the right way. So it goes this way up. Now I've put the stamp that way on the platform this time, the block, sorry. So I can hold it like this to decide where I want it. Because when I was using the other one, I could judge off the edges where I wanted it. With this one, it's judging from top to bottom. So I wanted to make sure I could position it where I wanted to. So it's not just about thinking where are you going to put your piece, but where are you actually going to put the stamp on the block you're using. And it's something to consider. I do have a whole selection of blocks, and I am going to be doing a video about the different blocks versus the platform. As I say, I do have a platform, I just don't use it as often as maybe I should or could. Okay, so you can see there is the image of the label piece. So yeah, I've got a whole range of different platforms, but I tend to find that the All and Create ones, the blocks, do what I need them to do with the greatest ease. So I'm going to do this one twice into the ink, into the embossing powder, and that's just to try and give it extra oomph. So once it's warm and everything's melted, and while it still is warm, I'm going to pop it back in and put some more embossing powder over the top. Now one of the things that you can do with this afterwards, because this is coming up quite pale, so what you can do afterwards when you've done this is colour it in with a glue pen and put some additional black embossing powder on, or you can use some gold embossing powder onto it to add a little bit of interest, or if you've got embossing powder that looks like it's a little bit more aged, and it just adds more interest to it. So what this has done is make it all a little bit smoother, but I actually think it is a little bit too pale. So I want to make that stand out a little bit. So there's a few things you can do. You can use, as I say, black embossing powder with a glue pen. Now I do have a glue pen somewhere, and I recently found it and then lost it and then found it. Aha, I've left it on my desk. Fantastic. So the option of using a glue pen is quite simple. You're actually going to go, once that's cooled down, you're going to go around it and then add on either a different embossing powder, or you can use some gilding flakes. So I'm going to get, right, I have a choice of two. So unlike a lot of people, I don't keep my embossing powder in their little pots because I spill them. I do have a few in little pots, the ones that I don't use as often, but the ones that I use more frequently, or have used more frequently, tend to be here. Although having said that, I do have this vintage mahogany. Now that I think would work. So I'm going to show you the various options that I've got here just by stamping again onto this little piece of paper. So we will use, might as well use the same stamp. Pop a bit of ink on. So option number one, now this is the one that first came to my mind. So don't panic if you suddenly think, oh my word, it doesn't look right, because I don't think that does look right, but I'm not panicked. So this is option number one, and I rather like this one. This is actually my favourite of all the embossing powders I currently own. So this one, you can see, has a hint of green in it, which is really nice if you want that aged look. Okay, so you've got that option. Numero 2 is, let me find that, pop you back in there. Right, the next one we've got is gold. So I'm sure you've all seen gold embossing powder, but it means we can do a direct comparison. And I've just had another thought of what I could do actually. With not liking that, you could, in fact, do this onto a piece of card rather than a piece of paper. And then you could, no, this one doesn't have a spoon in it. I wonder why that is. Never mind, I have fingers. So we can pop some embossing powder on. So you could do these on a piece of card, so it had a little bit more oomph, and you could then cut them out and stick them on, so that you're actually also adding dimension to your piece. And I may well end up doing that. What I would say to you is once you've got the powder on, you can stop panicking that the ink's going to dry out, because it doesn't. Once the powder's on, it's kind of protecting the ink. So then you can take your time getting your heat gun and starting heating it up. So that's gold. Now, the next one, I'm actually going to have to use another piece of paper underneath because it isn't in a tub. Right, let's stamp you again. So you'll see, and I say this every time when I'm stamping, I don't press really, really hard. It's just gentle taps, and make sure you cover the whole of it. And also what I tend to do is move my ink pad around, sorry. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one is it means that you don't get any lines in your image from where the ink pad is constantly going in the same direction. But the other thing is that ink pads, although they're relatively smooth, more so as they start getting older, tend to lose a little bit of their push in certain areas. So I suppose it's a bit like a mattress. They get a little bit tired, the sponginess on them. Not sure about this one. It's a little bit sparkly for what I'm after, but we can try it. So when they lose the sponginess on the ink pads, what you find is you don't necessarily get the same ink coverage from the whole of the ink pad. So you'll be able to feel and see where you're actually getting the coverage from. So it's definitely worth bearing that in mind. Don't give up on an ink pad the second it doesn't work the first time. Move it around and see whether you can get any more ink out of it. Most ink pads do come with re-inkers. As I say, I've just not come across the re-inker for VersaFine Clair. So if anyone does know about VersaFine Clair re-inkers, please let me know. It would be appreciated. Right, so now we have 3 options. Which one do we think goes best on this? I'm actually thinking the one that I didn't like goes better on it. Or possibly that one. No, I think it's that one goes best. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do this on camera, but what I will do is cut that out and stick it over the top of that so that that is raised up, because I don't like the way that's turned out. So I'll cut out the middle, so we're not going to have this bit in, and I'll cut the edge off so it's actually a frame, and I'll attach that onto there. What I'm going to do is carry on with making this as if it has worked, and then you can see how I'm edging it and also how I'm sticking the letters on. So I'm going to stick my letters within here, and the letters that I'm going to use, 4 letters that go with a heart, L-O-V-E. So I've got my pokey tool. Now this is my old decrepit pokey tool, and all the outer layer, this was once nice and sort of spongy. It's been picked off and because it started falling off. I do have 2 lovely new ones that I got last year sometime, and they're still lovely and new, and I can't bring myself to actually use them. I just like this one too much. Right, this isn't coming off terribly well. Right, I'll not use that one, we'll use the one next to it. I do like these little letters. That's the first one that's never come off. Ever not come off even, not never come off. So we need L, O, oops, V. Do we have a V on that page? Yes, we do. It's amazing when you're doing things like that, you suddenly realise, I don't know my alphabet. Obviously I do, but it just disappears sometimes when you're doing things. And E. Now these are not terribly sticky when they're going onto a shiny surface. So what I'm going to do is actually use my glue. And what I also need is my little glue stick, just for spreading the glue out. So just like the ones that you used to have in school, and I'm one of these, I'm sure you've all seen it, that use the back of my hands where I put my glue and then just spread it out with this. And the advantage of this again is twofold. Number one, it means that everything is easy to place in the glue. Oops. And then we can stick it on. And number two is you get to peel it all off afterwards, which to me is the best bit. Make sure you've got a decent layer of the glue on, because otherwise the pieces won't stay in place. Don't worry if bits squish out the side, it will just ball up and move away. And you do have a little bit of wiggle room because it's going onto a smooth surface. You have a little bit more wiggle room than if it was going straight onto paper. That grabs quicker when it's onto paper. The glue that I'm using is Cosmic Shimmer. This has been my go-to glue for a long time now. I do have other glues. I have my hot glue gun. I have my glue tape runners. I have my glue pen that you've seen earlier, but I just like this one. I like the size of the bottle, it's not too big. This is the larger of the bottles that they do. You can get the smaller bottle of this, and it's just my go-to glue. I have got obviously gel mediums and things like that which you can use for heavier items that you need to stick, but I like that. And I don't want to put, I was just thinking then, did I want to put the exclamation mark on? And I don't. So that's going to dry in, make my hand look like it's super smooth, and I'm very young, which obviously I'm not, but I love it. Right, so we then have a decision to make around the edging. Now there is pink in this, and this is a very shimmery embossing powder. And I think that will look rather nice. Get rid of some of this piece of paper. There we go. I think that's going to look rather nice on here. So I need something other than black ink to attach it. So I'm going to use the Perfect Medium. Now I have two of these at the moment. One of them you can see it's a bit past it, but I keep it. I've actually used that earlier today, and the pieces in it are actually gold acrylic ink from earlier today when I was playing with that. But this is my newer one. Again, I'm not a great big fan of this because I tend to find that the foam breaks off. Now I don't know if it's something I'm doing, but basically this is a glue. It's called Perfect Medium because it's the medium that will stick things to your project. It says on the back, Clear Perfect Medium, specially developed to work as a fixative for perfect pearls, pigment powders. Also works for embossing, resist and watermark inks. So I first got it years ago. It came in little squares with perfect pearls. And I still have the perfect pearls and I use them occasionally. But the little ones just died a death many moons ago. So I've ended up getting a larger replacement one. Now what I'm going to do with this is very similar to what I did with the black ink the other day when I was making this on the first video, but I can just go all the way around. I'm going to add little bits on top, and then I will just take the little, you can see the little bits are breaking off. I don't like it, but at the minute it is the only sticky pad that I have about. I might have to do some investigating of alternatives, I think. So this is quite a bright embossing thing that I'm going to put on. Being troublesome at the top. Right, I'm just going to get my pokey tool and just get rid of any little bits that I don't want. Okay, pop the lid on that so it doesn't attract all the embossing powder. Right, so what we're going to do is quite simply sprinkle this on, just all the way around the edges. So it's only sticking where I've put the perfect medium, which is what you want. Okay, so that now looks very different to how it did a minute ago, and when it heats up and melts it will look different again. But what I'm going to then do is bring the black back in at the edges, because I think even though the pink is pretty, the black continues to make things stand out, and that's what you want. You never know, I might even do pink for this to make it stand out. That might be an option. What I will do is, when I've actually redone this edge, something there, and put it on, stuck it on, so when I've done one of these on card and stuck it on, I will put a picture of it on Facebook. So if you want to see that, pop over to Angie B Cards and Crafts on Facebook and it will be there. Hopefully it'll be there by the end of today. If not, I'll definitely get it on over the weekend. So you can see that's all beginning to melt. I'm going to lift it up slightly, and the reason for that is, otherwise what is happening is I'm actually heating the mat below, which means it's going to take longer. Again, this, I wasn't planning on using this, so this is taking a little bit longer because I've not got my stronger tool out. This one really needs a stronger tool, but you can see it's going lovely pale pink colour. Oh, that's a bit of my thumb skin just gone in there. Oh, I've just taken a little bit of it off. That's fine. There we are. You know, I think no matter how often someone's crafted with embossing powders, there's just something amazing about them. The way that they suddenly turn with the impact of the heat. So I've got some of the glue, it's just solidified onto my thumb. Oh, I quite like the way that's going now. Right, so I'm just going to give that a minute to cool down so that I don't actually burn myself, and then I will lift it up for you to have a look at. There we go. Right, so you can see it's a really nice pale pink, but it's shimmery. I do quite like that. I think it's pretty. This whole tag is now roasting hot. So what I'm going to do in a minute is actually edge it with the black again. I'm going to use the Stazon for that because I just want it to stay on. Just want it to sit permanently. I don't want to have to heat emboss it again. So check. Yeah, that's all solid now. So that's okay to put the other ink on top of. Okay. So I'm just bringing that in along the edge, but as I said the other video, you're just going at about a 45-degree angle as well, so you're getting it slightly on the front, because what you want to happen is you want it to act as a frame. So if you look at that now, one half has a black frame on it, the other half has got pink as the edge. It's a very, very fine frame, but it just finishes it off. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit just over the top on the bottom. I do like just, I can't help but grunge things up a little bit. It seems to be in my blood. Just pop a little bit over the top here and here. Basically the bits that would stick out and would get in the way. Got a funny feeling this Stazon pad's going to get ruined soon. You see all the threads coming off it? Because I don't treat them terribly well. I ask them to do a lot. Right. So, I actually quite like that. I know I need to finish off this bit, and I will do that, and as I say, I'll put it onto the Facebook page. I'm just going to add a little bit more up there. Yeah, it needs that. Sorry, it's just my desire to grunge. I can't help it. There we are. Oh yes, that's much better. So I will finish that off. I think what I may well do is go around this a little bit with some other colour as well, just to make it pop. But I actually quite like the way that that's framed. The reason that letter has now gone wonky, I'm going to guess, is because I reheated it all when I was doing the heat embossing, and it started to float on top of the clear embossing powder and it just tweaked slightly. But in actual fact, I like the way it looks with that slight wonkiness to it. I think it just adds to the effect. What I would then do is get my piece of string to go with it, which is refusing to go through. There we go. I'm just thinking this could probably do with some embellishments, but I don't know what, and I don't know that I want to put some on. What I will do, as I say, is I'll do this, figure out which one of those. I think it is probably going to be that, but I may try it in the pink. In fact, if I do that now, let's see what it looks like in the pink before I finish, and then you know what it is I'm planning to do. So we need the perfect medium. So one time that you do actually have to clean your stamp is when you use something like perfect medium, because it's effectively a glue. So I'm terrible at cleaning my stamps. I will give them a quick wipe, but I don't clean them per se. I do actually own some stamp cleaner, and I rarely use it. I think I've had the same bottle for about 4 years. So it's not something that is a favourite of mine. So that's gone a little bit dark because I didn't clean before I put it on. And then we'll just get the embossing powder and let's see how it looks on here. So that's one of the things that I would always say to you, is just play. If you're making a piece and it doesn't go as you planned, don't think, oh, I've ruined it. Just think, oh, what can I do with it instead? How can I change it? What can I do that's going to make it work? Because it's your piece. It's entirely up to you what happens to anything you're making. And the other thing is, try and learn from what you do and what does and doesn't work. So I now know that using the VersaFine Clair with clear embossing powder on an MDF block that's got lots and lots of different layers of acrylic paint doesn't work, which is fine. I've learnt from it, so I won't do that again. I won't do another piece that has that impact. That is already solidified. Oh, she says putting a thumb straight in it when it's wet. So clever. So clever. Right, just let me grab a pair of scissors. I put little labels on my scissors because I'm sure everyone who is a crafter will understand this. People think, oh, there's scissors in the craft room, I'll just go and get them. And then use your precious paper scissors to cut, I don't know, a piece of material, or to cut a tag off something, or a piece of plastic or something like that, and it ruins them. So I now have purple tags on my scissors that are specifically for sticky stuff, which I haven't got. I've got another pair of these which have got a purple tag on for sticky stuff, and I have these ones which say paper only on them, so that if anyone comes in and dares to touch them, oops, they will get into trouble. Although I think I've scared the family enough to make sure that they don't do that. I'm just going to do a rough cut round this. It's not going to be brilliant. Cutting out isn't my best skill. But I do find it quite therapeutic. It's one of the things that I like working with digi-stamps, is that when you cut them out, you just get completely mesmerised doing it and engrossed in what you're doing. It's quite mindful in the effect it can have on you, which is really helpful in this day and age, because we don't often get to be as mindful as we should. Now, this obviously isn't going to be the final piece. So all I'm doing now is to cut out the middle piece, putting a hole in it, cutting out to the corners. Now this is just my methodology. There's probably lots and lots of ways of doing this. This is just the way that I like to do it. And then I just come in and cut into the corners. These scissors are brilliant. These are Fiskars scissors. And they're so good because they are sharp as anything right to the very tip. As I say, we know this isn't the final piece, but this is just to give us an idea of how it's going to look and whether it will work. Because again, what you can do with this is use the black ink that you've used around the edges. So it's about pulling the whole thing together rather than keeping it as separate parts. You can actually, oh, wrong way up, have that onto there, but we can edge it. Black ink pad there. This is just a vague idea of how it's going to look. Obviously, it's going to be cut out properly for starters. But I think that has the potential to work. Maybe even on a different colour of card. Now there's an idea, isn't it? So that's another thing with your stamps, is they don't have to be stamped onto something plain. They can stamp onto whatever you want them to go onto. So if I was to stamp this onto something which had a brown or a gold or even a green to it, that would work. And then put the pink on top. Right, I will do some finishing off with that and put the picture onto Facebook, Angie B Cards and Crafts. I'll also put it onto Instagram, which is Angie B. Please subscribe and click the little bell so that you get notification of any videos that I put up. I'm continuing doing my 10-minute tutorials, which are roughly 10 minutes, some slightly less, some a little bit more. Just hints and tips on things that you can do within your crafting. If there's anything specific that you'd like to see, let me know. I will be doing a video about the different kinds of stamping blocks that you can use and what my personal opinion is of them. And it is personal because it's personal preference as to what you want to use. So I will be doing that. And I'll also be doing videos about different types of stamps and different types of inks. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please give a thumbs up if you have, and I will see you all again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.